The tribunal have sacked Nasarawa State Governor Sule, and also on the issue of the indefinite strike that was supposed to hold today, NLC have suspended that strike indefinitely for the next 30 days to give the government an opportunity to actually, implement some of those promises that they made to them. The program is the Dailies on Equa Television, where we will be keeping you updated with all the stories that are dropping on the paper. I am Sela Shadash, and I'll be doing this alongside Rachel Tanze. Good morning.
Morning, Sally.
How you doing?
I'm fine.
All right, we're live on Facebook and on YouTube. You can do well to follow us live there. Drop your comment or your contribution on any of the story that is of interest to you. And we will go straight into the paper, starting with the first newspaper.
On first news, Desenia Ryan in UK court as AFCC begins extradition process, obtains arrest warrant. Court grants her £70,000 bail in bribery case, says she's a fight risk. And on extortion, police probe officers over 80 million naira allegedly shared with IGP and CP. Tribunal sacks Nasarawa Governor affirms Fubara Finteri's election in Rivers and Adamawa. Army destroys IPOP camps, shrines, recover corpses as Air Force bombs terrorist camps in Borno State. The big story on the paper, Labour suspends nationwide indefinite strike for 30 days to allow federal government to implement promises. Chicago Varsity confirms Tinubu graduated from school in 1979, authenticates certificate. Nigerians almost destroyed my career for slapping policeman, a statement coming from Shehu Kuti. And we have a story that says a pregnant woman, son of owner, about to wed lady died in Rivers, illegal refining inferno. Family of 4 electrocuted in Taraba State. Egypt CC announces third term bid. And that's all the news on First News newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper, starting with a big story on the Nation newspaper, where we have federal government vote 100 billion naira for the high capacity CNG buses. The writer following the story, Labour suspends strike after signing agreement with the government, and then some of the agreement that they have signed involves suspension of the strike for 30 days, federal government to press state on wage award, tax incentive for private sector workers, 35,000 naira for federal workers for 6 months, 75,000 for 15 million households, suspension of VAT on diesel, increased distribution of subsidy fertilizer, and then joint visitation to the refineries. So you can do well to read more detail of some of the promises that the federal government signed together with the NLC. Other stories on the paper here, we have Tribunal sack Nasarawa Governor, and we have the ECA withdrawal, states to get 1 trillion naira refund. 18 burned to death in Rivers illegal refinery fire. Obaseki inaugurate 34 SSA and 152 SAs. You can find detail of that particular story on page 27. President celebrate General Akiri Day at 84. Gunmen kill 9 in Plateau State. You can find detail of that story inside the paper. And also we have World Health Organization says Oxford vaccine for malaria. You can start reading on the front page and continue inside the paper. Trump phone case trial begins. You can find that story inside the paper as well. We have our expectation for Liberia polls. You want to know some of those expectations, you can get the paper and read more detail of that. Tinubu graduated from the Chicago school in 1979, says the school. Varsity releases document to Atiku. You can find our news on page 4. And we have NAF airstrike kill terrorists in Borno State. And then we have Sanu seek 259% pay raise. Sanu seek 25.9% pay raise. That's talking about the Senior Association of the. You can find more of that story inside the paper. We have the picture story here also, where we have the issue of the 100,000 bribe trial. UK court slam tough bill on Desani. EFCC to press on with high extradition. You can find more detail of that story, where we're having some of the bill terms involve 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew, wearing of e-tag, and then 70,000 pounds ball bond. You can find more of that story inside the paper, and that's all on the Nation newspaper.
On the Daily Times newspaper, customers of 20 closed banks to receive 16.18 billion naira liquidation dividend. The big story on the paper, again, federal government moves to avert indefinite strike billed for Tuesday. The writer under the story, locked in talks last night with labor agreement not reached in some areas in first meeting. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. SSANU claims over 100 members died over 4 months on paid salary. Over of Benin tax immigration on border security. There's any under curfew in UK AFCC to extradite. How you can find more details on page 5. Jubilation in Lafia as tribunal sacks Nasarawa governor, ex-governor in court. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. And on the downside, we see that First Lady Garba Shehu in hot exchange over economy. More details can be found on page 5, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
Let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper, where we have at the platform Lumbabe, Oyedele, and others underscore how to develop Nigeria. You can find more detail of that story on page 3. And we have the big story here. Labour accept federal government proposal, suspend the strike for 30 days. And I think it's imperative that we talk about that, where a lot of Nigerians had their hopes high, let's say civil servants especially, because they felt that this was the best language the government understood. Because over the years, we keep seeing government making promises and going back on their promises, making promises and going back on their promises. And I felt, or rather Nigerians felt, that Labour was actually not doing what they wanted to do, so they had to push Labour somehow, and Labour felt that the government needed to sit up and do something. That was why they wanted, in fact, a lot actually said that definitely was going to hold. When you look at the speech of the president on Sunday, a lot of people felt something was just not okay with that speech. The fact that education was not being mentioned, fixing of our refineries was not being mentioned, corporate private sectors was not even being captioned, and all of that. And then a lot of Nigerians had their expectations high, and then it was dashed on that Sunday. But then after having, you know, a little talk with the government, we've seen that Labour have finally agreed to suspend it for the next 30 days. So that is to say that we'll be hearing what the outcome of this will be by next month, hopefully 2nd to 3rd of November, whether the strike is going to hold or not. But quite a number of lessons when you take a look at the issue of this Labour and federal government. I've said this before, and I want to repeat it, that I do not know why we always have to have a body threatening to go on strike before we see federal government doing the right thing. I mean, can't we just have a government or a leader doing the right thing without us having to hear there is a threat for strike? It happened during the issue of the ASU strike, and we've seen even on the paper, the senior association are complaining that some of their staff died because of unpaid salary. And we had that during the 8-month strike. A number of lecturers had to die. A number of them had to resort to looking for alternatives because most of them had no any other livelihood apart from teaching. Now, you begin to ask, for somebody who has given his entire being, his entire time to serve the nation, and then his wages or her wages is not coming as due, definitely there will be some sadness, and there will be, you know, a way of retaliation, so the government can actually hear them out. Now, right now, we've seen that from the nation, we saw some of the terms talking about fixing of refineries, talking about let's have some of the CNG buses rolling out, talking about capturing private sector in it, because all of these things, the private sector was not being mentioned, what they hope to do for them. So right now, quite a lot of things, Nigerians are just waiting with their arms folded, and then it seems as if they have even lost their hope on maybe Labour, because they feel maybe Labour is actually not speaking the minds of Nigerians, because it's definitely going to look as if workers do not know what they are doing, and a lot of things are actually following up this suspension of this strike coming from the Labour. But we believe that whatever the deliberation is, whatever the talk is with the government, hopefully there was a reason that make Labour to actually hold on or pull for the meantime. And then so right now our fingers are just crossed to see what the next 30 days will look like. And now I hope that from August salary that we're seeing some civil servants getting, this money should be implemented, because if we're talking about 6 months, that means from October down to March. So we're hoping that it's not just on the papers, and then we see that when pay is being paid, it's not being implemented. We hope that it will be implemented starting from this October salary downward.
You said on the paper so that the federal government have signed 100 billion naira for the CNG buses. And then I see a lot of deceit in that, because they're yet to release 185 billion naira palliative that each state is supposed to get 5 billion. But you know what? Let's leave the federal government aside for a second, and then let's look at labor. Let's look at the NLC. And the question here is that what can the government do for you in 30 days that they refuse to do in 120 days? Because you've given them an ample amount of time, enough graces, you stretched a lot for them for over 120 days, and they're not able to deliver. And then the question is, what would they do for you in 30 days that they had a whole 120 days and they couldn't do one for you out of all the many requests you've made, out of all the many dialogue, out the many, we will go on a strike, we're giving you 2 more weeks, we will go on a strike, we're giving you 8 more weeks, we will go on a strike, we're giving you this more days, you have been. And then finally, I mean, Sele, when I heard the first October speech by the president, you could almost say that, you know what, Labour would go on a strike, because he didn't, the president didn't say even 1/3, not even a quarter, not even half of what they have demanded will be implemented anytime soon. And I believe that the idea of an indefinite strike is simple. If the government is saying that going on a strike will cause more harm to the economy, then when Labour is saying we are going on a strike, then it means that the government has the power to determine how long the strike will be. That's what it means. Meaning, if by yesterday, the third rather, if by today Labour was to go on this strike that they say they will go, and then the government reacts and meet their demand in the next 12 hours, the strike will be called off. I believe the strike is to push the government to act quickly if they truly don't want a harm, if they don't want the economy to go down the more. That's the whole idea behind an indefinite strike. The government will decide how long the strike will linger or how short it's going to be. And then you are wondering now, what is it that, what more dialogue are you going to have? What more 30 days are you going to have with them? When you look at what the package the president really revealed on that day is not that exciting, because it's just for a period of 6 months, and then we are still having our dollar, the naira devaluing. We're still having a free fall. We're having every other thing, inflation. We are having, for sure, the NPR is still going to go high, and all of that. We are having all the things that are going wrong in the economy as it is now, and then the little that will help reduce the hardship of the country. The government is adamant about it on a lot of level, and then we'll just keep waiting to see, Sele. But I believe that a lot of Nigerians expected much more from the NLC and even the government entirely, and we are disappointed on a lot of level. But then what kind of common man say that to wait and see what will unfold as things goes on?
Well, Rachel, quite a lot. We just like you said, we're just hoping to see what will be the outcome. 30 days it is, so our eyes are actually fixed on our calendars and on federal government and Labour. So let us see what they hope to achieve in those 30 days. Still on the Guardian newspaper, we have another story on the issue of inflation on the front page, where we are seeing that food and fare prices spike, put more Nigerians under pressure, and that is only as a result of the inflation. And we're still seeing that on the front page of the paper. Cooking gas scarcity looms as the price hit 1,000 naira per kg. And we remember recently on the paper we saw that by December, maybe for you to fill up about 12 kg, you need about 18,000 naira to fill up that cylinder. So quite a lot of things following up the inflation and all of these things. You can find more of that on page 7. And on HND, much ado about conversion, 650,000 top up program. You can find more of that inside the paper. Also, we have EFCC obtain arrest warrant on Dizani, Beck's extradition plan. More on Begin's extradition plan. You can find that on page 3. Tribunal sacks Sude, declares um, Ombugadu winner of the Nasarawa poll. You can find more of that story also on page 9. We have the picture story still showing us the president, Femi Bajabiamila, the minister of labor, and then the two labor union leaders. So you can find more of the story on the front page, and that's all on the Guardian newspaper.
On New Telegraph, federal government moves startup funding increase to 3.75 trillion naira annually, targets 500% investment growth in broadband. You can find more details on page 3. NDIC to pay 16.18 billion naira dividends to liquidated bank customers. NAV airstrike kill terrorists, destroy logistic base in Borno, and on extortion, police probe officers over 80 million naira allegedly shared with IG and CP. And on hardship, Bauchi farmers now sleep on farms to ward off crop thief at night. You can find more details on page 7. Asked Niger leader to file legal case against purchased. You can find more details on page 4. The big story on New Telegraph. We've obtained arrest warrant for Dezeni's extradition, says EFCC, as UK court grants former minister £70,000 bail in 500,000 pounds bribery case, £500,000 bribery case. You can find more details on page 4. Fuel subsidy is organized crime, says OB. You can find details of his statement on page 3, 4, and 8. Violence against women, children rampant in Ebonyi State. Onyeka to Ebonyi government don't rename Chuba Okadibo Airport, warns Elechi Ogun not to start crisis in the southeast. You can find more details on page 2. On Nasarawa State Tribunal, we've seen that the tribunal sacks Sule, declares Ambugadu winner, government to appeal verdict, judgment validation of the people's will, statement coming from PDP. Adamawa Tribunal dismisses Ado's petition against Finteri's election. NLC TUC signs memorandum of understanding with federal government to suspend strike for 30 days. And at the downside of the paper, we are seeing a study that says loneliness increases chance to Parkinson's disease. You can find more details on page 27, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
I think this story is a little bit of interest to me, the issue of extortion, where we have police probe officers over 80 million naira allegedly shared with the IG and CP. And I'm happy we're beginning to see that there's serious of a house cleaning in our security agency, because over the years we've had the issue of extortion coming from police. We've even had some civilians being maltreated by the police officers. I mean, recently the first paper we saw where we're having Shehu Kuti talking about the fact that his career was at risk because he slapped a police officer, and quite a number of mixed reaction when it comes to why would the police officer get involved with a civilian to the point that the civilian will raise his hand. There are even times we've even seen where police officers actually would maltreat civilians. And over the years, people have talked about the manner of the manner of training these police officers get, and they need to actually be trained in a particular way to do. Now we're seeing extortion. We remember last week, Rachel, we had a number of callers, about 2 or so, who were talking about the pension scheme of our retired police officers, that some of them do not get well paid while on service, and then even after service they are not being paid. And we see that one of the reasons they will give is the reason why we are seeing extortion coming in. So I think it is important that if we want to talk about having a very clean house when it comes to the issue of our security agency, then we really need to talk about the issue of this extortion. I mean, you and I have been in a situation where you're applying the public car, and then it was so humiliating for me personally, because it has gotten to the point that even a security agency asks you that whatever you have, they have a change to give you, and it's more like you're going to buy vegetables or tomatoes in the market, and you wonder how did we get to where we are presently with our security agencies, especially the police force and others. So I'm really happy to see that the issue is being probed, and I hope we begin to see more house cleaning, so we'll be able to have a very decent security. I mean, when you say the police is your friend, a lot of people say they are not our friends anymore, because it's ideal or it's expected that they are the next people how to relate with civilians. But then over the years, we've had the issue of the hashtag answer that came as a result of police brutality on civilians and all of that. So I'm happy that such a story makes it to our paper, and I hope that beyond just being on the paper, we'll begin to see more action being done to probe issues of extortion when it comes to the security agency body.
Sally, I would like to say fund the police. Let the government of Nigeria fund the police and give them no reason whatsoever to find themselves in such position, so that when you are found in it, you'll be dealt squarely, because you have no reason whatsoever to do what you're doing. At the same time, regardless of the position you are as a police officer, you have no right whatsoever to do what you're doing. You have no excuse. You have no reason. There's just no room for that, because you signed up for it. You didn't blindly step into it. You knew what your paycheck would be like. You know what the job is going to be like. However, what no Nigerian signed up for is, of course, the inflation rate, of the exchange rate, and all of that. Nobody is signed up for a bad economy. But we also need to understand that you're not the only one going through the hardship. So don't use the hardship as an excuse to be corrupt, because then everybody will have an excuse to be corrupt. I have an excuse to be corrupt. You have an excuse to be corrupt, because you know what? Everybody is feeling the pains of what is going on. Everybody is struggling financially in the country, because when you look at our poverty rate, then you know that very few people in Nigeria compared to the population are really living large or very comfortable, but everybody is feeling the blow of the economy. So when we say that you have a reason because of hardship, then every other Nigerian have a reason to be corrupt. Every other Nigerian have a reason to collect bribe and not do their job. So you have no reason whatsoever. You are a law enforcement officer, so by nature you should be the one probing people collecting bribe, and you shouldn't be the one in a case where we are seeing even an inspector general and also commissioner of police. These are things that shouldn't be heard of, because if the top is that corrupt, imagine what is going on, because we will not have junior officers doing this, because they know even you as the orga cannot point fingers or at them, because you were doing the same thing. So I just hope that this quick cleanup is very thorough, and then it shouldn't be selective or sentimental. It shouldn't be that, okay, there are people that are used as scapegoat and certain people are not used as. If we really want to clean up our system, then it should be inclusive of every other person that is found wanting and guilty. But yes, we will keep telling the Nigerian government to fund the police, fund any sector, any agency that is saddled with the responsibility of securing the life of citizens, because if you don't, they will turn out to be the ones that the citizens will be fearing and running away from, and we don't want that. It's already what we see in the country as it is now, but I believe that we can fix it, and definitely a better Nigeria where we won't be seeing law enforcement officers doing what they are supposed to be combating.
Very sad. I would just like to say it's mostly not even just the junior, police officers that are found wanting. We've seen here that they are sharing it with the IG and also the CP. So that is to tell you that a lot of things is happening. No wonder when you even go to report a case, and then they'll tell you that we don't have paper. So you have to pay money just to get your paper. Imagine my documents are missing and I need to write down a statement, and then you tell me you don't have. So this is how corrupt things are. And they'll tell you that there are certain things the government is supposed to provide for them. But the government is not providing, so they have to use their own money. So just like you said, I think it is important that they are being funded, because if this is just in the police, so imagine if we begin to probe other bodies, you realize that there are a lot of bribery and a lot of crime going on that nobody is aware of. So we're happy such story make it. Let's take a look at the next paper, which is the Leadership newspaper, starting with a big story on the leadership, which is captioned as hardship Relief as Labour suspend indefinite strike at the 11th hour. Gives the federal government 1 month to implement spell out programs and then direct workers to go to work. Other stories on the front page, we have non-interest bank, Taj Bank leads in Tier 1 capital PBT. You can find that on page 22. Also, we have Enugu Tribunal verdict violate constitution coming from Barrister Ezeke. Other stories on the front page of the paper with what is trending: India to ban pilots from wearing perfumes. And on numbers, Nigeria set $5 billion target for startups. You can find more detail of all the story on page 2. NDIC begins payment of 16.18 billion naira to liquidate banks depositors. More of that story can be found on page 7. Also, we have 17 die in Rivers pipeline explosion. EFCC secures warrant arrest against Dezeni. And then Nigeria first emeritus Professor Umaru Shehu dies at 72. You can find more detail of that story inside the paper. We still have the picture story showing the labor union leaders together with the Minister for Labor and Employment, where they were signing some agreement in regards to the extension of the strike. So you can do well to grab the paper and read any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Daily Sun newspaper, how I would have handled subsidy removal and palliative distribution. A statement coming from Peter Obi insists fuel subsidy is organized crime. Federal government reaches truce with NLC and TUC. Strike suspended for 30 days. Government urged to prevail on states to implement salary award. More details can be found on page 8. Federal government begins Dezeni's extradition. Ex-minister arraigned in UK court slams £70,000 bail. And on our economy, Buhari's ex-spokesman counters Tinubu's wife. Tribunal sacks Nasarawa governor, declares PDP's Ambugadu winner, dismisses Labour Party's petition against Fubara's election. Enugu Labour Party lawmaker wins. More details can be found on page 26 and 29. And on terrorism, 22 Katsina local government not safe, Governor Rada tells IGP. Fire kills 20 persons at bunkering site in Rivers State. 2 commuter buses, 4 motorcycle, others burned in attack by armed men in Ebonyi. Non-interest banking, Taj Bank leads in Tier 1 capital PBT. You can find more details on page 2. And at the downside of the paper, we have COVID-19 scientists win Nobel Prize for medicine. You can find more details on page 27. And that's all the news on Daily Sun newspaper.
Well, we hope that the issue of terrorism that we're seeing on our papers, the governors of the state will actually, do something. Here we are seeing that the governor of Katsina is calling on the IGP, and we've seen even on the paper there was a killing in Plateau State as well as a result of insecurity and terrorism. So I think it is important that we put our hands together, because I think these things are creeping back again little by little by little. There was a time that even in a hospital in Katsina, there was a time terrorists took over hospitals that patients could not go there. So you know what that means. So we hope that we don't just look at it that it's just in Katsina, it's just in Plateau State. We're seeing that we're having pockets of attack here and there. So I hope that the government will actually rise up. And as they are calling on the IGP, I hope that he send his boys quick to actually go and, salvage whatever the situation there. But I noticed there's a story on the paper that we've not looked at, the issue of illegal mining, where we saw a pregnant woman losing her life. And this is something we've talked about over and over and over. We've called on security agency to probe the issue of illegal mining. We've spoken to even the relevant authorities and agencies, telling them to wake up to all of these things. And one thing for sure is that the more you talk, it seems as if the people involved in that are not listening. We keep saying it's not just about the fact that the government is stopping, but your life is at risk as well. Because if something happened to you, nobody can even account for it. But even lucky such make it to the paper. There are people that die and then you don't even know. We just hear missing person, not knowing that this person was actually in so place, and the government cannot account for. We hope that we don't just keep a blind eye to issues like this. We hope that the relevant authorities will go there. When we're having the minister, we saw when the minister of mineral resources was actually talking about that, we are going to do something about that. And he gave the people who are involved in that, he gave them a timeline where they are supposed to vacate there or get a proper license that will actually give you the guarantee to do that. So we are really sending our condolences to the people that were involved in that, and we hope that this will serve as a lesson to other people not to get there, because it's becoming unbecoming. And I hope that the government will actually do the right thing, and the people involved in that will also do the right thing.
No, Stella, I think the mindset people who are into oil bunkering have is that it's just worth taking the risks every day. Because aside from the economic effect illegal refining has on the on Nigeria, which is one of, because regardless we are losing lots of money to oil bunkering. One of it is the damage it does to the environment, and whether we like it or not, is one of, apart from oil drilling and all of that, we growing up, I remember seeing a lot of the damage, the fire when it starts. You will see how it burns people to unrecognizable level. And I believe maybe due to how media have changed and a lot of censor to sensitive materials, we no longer see how bad it is on TV anymore. But it's not a sight you would want to see, because when this fire got to these places, it's like the whole land become is no longer fertile. And then we also have the river and all the effects it brings. So whether we like it or not, apart from the oil economy it affects, that is the billions of money that is being lost to such illegal activity, we're also seeing agriculture being affected on another level. And I believe that the rate has reduced compared to how bad it was some 20 years back in Nigeria. Like, if I can, because it was always on news and all of that, it has reduced. But then is just one of those things that the government of Nigeria have to continue fighting, and there won't be an end to it until the people who are involved in it decide to say is not worth the risks, because we will keep seeing such sad stories about people being burned to death. Because the reason behind having a refinery, selling a legal refinery, is that it is up to standard. So there are all these protective measures that are put into place, that when it comes to illegal refining, there is no such. So it's like you're naked out there and there is no protection, there is no mechanism, there are no tools, there is nothing to protect or to stop certain things from happening. And that is why, just as we keep saying, let the government step in and see, how do we legalize this? How do we put it off standard? How do we bring an end to it? How do we, it is not an easy one, because over the years you will see that the government have been trying. At the same time, the people doing it are also relentless on their own side. But it's something that can be solved eventually, and then we will not be seeing these sad stories anymore.
Well, we just hope that that will be solved eventually, because
hope
you know, while you were talking, I was just thinking, now who are the buyers of this oil that we have, this illegal fine? Definitely we're not talking about people who are running 1,000 naira, 2,000 naira, even 100,000 naira business.
No.
So you know that there are a lot of people that are involved in this, and if we want to do away with it, then we need to start from the root. Who are the buyers? If we're able to get who the buyers are, then believe you me, we're already making a step toward cutting down all of this. And just like you said, let us know what it means for all these illegal refineries to become legal again. Just get the license, get the government involved, and I believe everything will be proper. Well, before we move to the next paper, we'd love to open the phone lines at this moment. We want to hear what your own contribution is. We've seen Tribunal have sacked some governors and they have reaffirmed some governors, and then we're seeing that NLC and the TUC have given the government another 30 days ultimatum to be able to meet up some of the promises. So when we come back from the break, we will open the phone lines and then we will hear what your own contribution is. Please stay tuned with us. Thanks for staying tuned. It's still the dailies. And before we went on break, we're looking at a number of stories on the paper. The 30 days ultimatum given to the federal government coming from Labour. We're also seeing the court have sacked certain governors and reaffirmed certain governors, especially that of Adamawa. And also we're seeing that quite a number of things happen on the paper. The issue of illegal refineries, probing in the security agency, and a lot of stories on the paper. So we would love to hear what your own contribution is concerning any of the story. Please do remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, as our number is displayed on your screen at this moment. Try to be civil with your language, and then try to also summarize your point in a minute, so other callers who are eager to actually air their view will also have the opportunity to do just that. I still have Rachel Tenzer with me. Thank you so much,
You're
Rachel.
welcome, Sally.
All right, let's take the next paper, which is the Vanguard newspaper. And on the Vanguard newspaper, we have manufacturers query federal government 6-month VAT waiver on diesel, which is part of the promises also the president made on that October 1st. Tribunal sacked Nasarawa governor in split decision. You can find more of that on page 13. And on palliative, government making announcement with limited thinking coming from the Labour presidential candidate Peter Obi. You can find more of what he said about that on page 11. Federal government draws roadmap to make Nigeria total digital economy. You want to know how Nigeria hope to achieve that? You can find that on page 8. The big story, which is on most of the papers: federal government Labour reached truce, nationwide strike suspended. With the rider, organized labor suspend nationwide strike, bill to start today for 1 month. Labour federal government sign memorandum of understanding on issues agreed on. Provisional, we have a provisional 35,000 naira wage award for workers secured. You can find more of the promises on page 5. We have Africa won't rise by prayer and fasting coming from Professor Lolumba. You can find that on page 8, and we've said that over and over. The prayer without work is useless. So beyond praying, we have to do something and put in the work also. Embracing effective and strategic leadership, part to Nigeria's progress still on Nigeria at 63. You can find more of that story on page 14. 35 persons burned to death at Rivers illegal oil refining site. More can be found on page 6. 8 killed, 5 injured in Plateau community. You find more of that on page 6. APC mock 8-man NNPP London protest, slam Kanu governor for blackmailing the federal government. You can find that on page 13. And coming from Anglican bishops, violence, impunity, greed, selfishness won't save Nigeria. And it seems this is what is stopping the country from growing. So you can find more of that on page 11. We have a sport coming from Adibi and also for sports. So you can do well to grab the Vanguard and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, 15 feared burned to death during bunkering activity in Rivers. Tribunal sacks Sule, declares PDP candidate as Nasarawa governor. Non-interest banking, Touch Bank, Little Tier 1 Capital, PPT. You can find more details on page 6. Lagos Ibadan Cargo Rail operating below capacity, a statement coming from NRC. Olubadan threatens to disown children, wives over financial allegations against brother. You can find more details on page 8. The big story on the paper: Labour suspends planned strike for 30 days, signs memorandum of understanding with federal government, agrees to payment of 35,000 naira wage award effective September. Federal government to urge state governments through NEC and Governors Forum to implement wage awards for their workers. Similar consideration to be given to local government and private workers. Memorandum of understanding shall be filed with court of competent jurisdiction within 1 week. You can find more details on page 8. Ocean community gets electricity after 91 years. You can find more details on page 23. World Health Organization recommends new cheap malaria vaccines for use. Nobel Prize goes to scientists behind mRNA COVID vaccines. You can find more details on page 29. AFCC begins extradition process as UK court grants Alison Madukwe £70,000 bail. You can find more details on page 30. No country floats its currency without having adequate supply. Statement coming from Peter Obi telling the federal government. You can find more details of his statement on page 28, and that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Richard, I keep seeing this cheap vaccine that is coming for malaria on our papers, coming from the World Health Organization recommending. And I think it will be important that we put our hands together to make sure they also get to us here, because we know that this is one of the illnesses that have killed quite a number, especially talking about children below the age of 1. We have 2, 5, and all of that. Mostly they are actually being affected, especially those living in the rural areas or swampy areas and all of that, that breeds mosquitoes. So we know that malaria is really something that's really doing well. And I hope that beyond it being on our paper, I'm happy that we're seeing a vaccine is being. I mean, there was a time where we're even talking about the issue of typhoid. And I hope that the vaccine also gets to, you know, Nigerians, because we know that over the years, mostly when you're being diagnosed with malaria, somehow, typhoid gets to put its ugly head also there, and then you begin to wonder what is the problem. So if all of this can be made accessible to people, beyond it being made, but is it going to be available? Is it going to be accessible to Nigerians? I think this is something that we want to know, and then we hope that when it gets there, it gets to everybody eventually when it gets down to our country. Because when we see innovations like this coming up, we get excited and happy, but then we get sad eventually because it doesn't get to the people that need it eventually. It's either you see that it stop at the urban area, and the people in the right areas do not have access. All right. Hello. Good morning. Good morning, sir. Please go ahead,
Good morning,
sir.
Samson. Go ahead.
Please, I believe in Nigeria we have a good team, a good leader. If this present leader work as he promised the Nigerians that it will work, well, I believe the beginning that I'm seeing will show a good performance before another president. Please, the big and the frontmen should have their good idea about this country, because they are the ones that are rolling us. As they do good, so we, the Jews and John one, will follow them. If they are still in this condition, hardship, suffering, so many people will look bad way, harmful, or perform also like them. They are our fathers. They have to move step after them.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much for your contribution.
All right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that's just it. If you like to pick up, thank you so much to our caller for calling in. If you like to pick up from what he said, and then maybe in relation to the World Health Organization vaccine.
I'll just talk about the World Health Organization vaccine. And then, first of all, the fact that we are still struggling with malaria issue that we have failed, because malaria is a sickness that is environmental in a lot of ways. Meaning, if we can be able to have clean enough environments that won't breed mosquitoes, that mosquito in Pacific, we won't be having malaria. So it means that we have also failed in going to the level where our environment doesn't make us sick. And it goes the same for typhoid also. It has to do with cleanliness, it has to do with sanitation, it has to do with the quality of our environment, and then it shows that we have failed in that level. However, this is good news to Africa and Nigeria, that we can now have vaccine, that we will one day wake up, and then as long as you're vaccinated, malaria is not a problem, and then it is affordable. That's one. So I believe that very soon we will be able to see more of it in Africa and also in Nigeria. So yes, kudos to the team that worked on this vaccine for us. It is something of global change and the kind of things that we need. No wonder we are seeing someone having a Nobel Prize for COVID-19 vaccines, and these are some of the world change that we need, because we have seen how malaria has killed a lot of people. It's still a threat to our health in this country. And then we are just looking forward to more of such groundbreaking discovery. We're looking forward to a vaccine for cancer. We've seen on the papers where there are news of such study going on, and then we will wake up one day to that. There was once a time there were no vaccine for hepatitis. We have it now. We're seeing that there is also for other sicknesses that have been a threat for a very long time. We had polio one time, and now we are waking up to in Nigeria that polio is no longer a problem. So we will keep seeing such drivers and change in the world and also in Africa, hopefully.
Of course. Let's take a look at the Teen Trust paper. Let's see what's happening to the children in school at this moment, where we have TFC gives scholarship and prizes to pupils. You can find that on page 4 of the paper. We have Community Senior High School wins 2023 Science Challenge. It's really kudos to that school, and we hope that they continue to represent their state, which is Lagos State, and also represent Nigeria. Other story here, we have Ajasa campus emerges winner of Honeyland School chess competition. We're seeing that beyond the classroom, a lot of students have other extra, knowledge in other things, and we're happy about that. You can find more of that. We have other columns here, one for lifestyle, also for career, and also well-being and short stories. So you can do well to grab the paper and also let your words read them and see how they can also be part of the life-changing in the nation. And that's all on Teen Trust paper.
On Sporting Sun, Messi leads the MLS in shirt sales. UEFA Champions League, Napoli captain banks on Osimhen to nil Real Madrid. The big story, international friendly Pesero dumps give Auburn recalls Emeru, Uwobi, Osai, Samuel, Murphy, Dele Bashiru gets maiden call up. You can find more details on page 6. Inside Benzema's insane car collection, Real Madrid prepares big offer to sign Dimarco, and we have Calvin Phillips tops Arsenal's midfield target for January transfer windows. Real Madrid tops ranking of best club players. Liverpool gets hefty FA fine. Players could face further sanction after VAR fury. We have Jota's wife calls Liverpool loss to Tottenham rigged. Mourinho hits at crazy Al Hilal offer. You can find more details at the back page. Entities Group Sky Bet Player of the Month Award. NHL charges Leicester teammates to sustain tempo. We have T-Tiger storm China on playing tour. You can find more details on page 7. And at the downside, we see Iguanu sends chilling Tyson Fury warning as Usyk fight sign. This is for our UFC lovers. You can find more details at the back page, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper.
All right, let's take a look at the world of business on Business Day newspaper, where we have economic slowdown shows up in banks, doubtful loan surge. Impairment costs rise by 285%. You can find more of that on the front page and continue inside the paper. How Tinubu's government fared in the first 4 months. You want to know how they fared, you can read it on the front page and continue on page 20. Maize, milk, plantain prices surge most in 1 year, because basically this is what people consume more directly or indirectly. You can find more of that story inside the paper. Also, we have cheap secrecy persists in Nigeria amid global crackdown. You can find more inside the paper. Taj Bank poses 129% surge in the half-year profit. You can find more of that story inside the paper. And we have a picture story as well on the front page of the paper. You can do well to grab the Business Day newspaper and see how it affects the nation, also affect you and I directly or indirectly. And that's all on Business Day newspaper. Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this with me. And thank you to our caller who called in on the program this morning. Thank you to the crew members, our supporters, and everyone that makes sure this program is always on air. Until we come here again tomorrow, do have a blessed day ahead.
Echo TV. Be part of Echo TV. Keep watching Echo Television International, the winning station.